Hey everybody, it's Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show, bringing you our episode with Chris Thomas King. Now listen, this was a live episode that we did before, but just in case you're on the podcast side, go to the show notes to get the latest on Chris's album Angola. All right, so Chris has been on the show several times. This time we're the first people to get him as he emerges out of the COVID cave. You know, he had, like a lot of us, locked down and just said, I'm going to get to work creating something. And then as he was, working on all his various projects, the George Floyd situation happened and he was moved and he created an entire album talking about capturing this moment in time and illustrating the Black condition for us in a way that I think is truly powerful. So I know you'll enjoy that, but also enjoy Chris just opening up his mind and having the first real interpersonal, interactive conversation he's had in months and months. So yeah, this is a long episode, but I know it's worth it and you'll enjoy the chat. By the way, joining me today co-hosting is Ryan Sullivan. He and I are working to support Trubify. But the main thing here to understand about this is that Ryan is a lifelong musician, and so I know he asks some great questions and brings in a point of view that I think is really powerful. Okay, enough about that. Let me say this to you. Hey, this is the giving season. And if you can, and if you're a person who's like, our group is going to designate one charity this year that we always do in the fall, because this is the time of year when everybody gives money. Hey, could you do me a favor? We would love that to be us here at Save the Brave. Go to savethebrave.com. Go to savethebrave.org and click on the donate tab. You think I'd get that right. And then just drop that money in there. It would be a great way. If we're not your charity, though, go to charityontop.org and buy a charity gift card for anybody. You don't have to actually send them a card. You can, but you can just say, hey, here's my gift to you. Here's $50 worth of charity. I've already covered all the costs and fees. Give it to whatever charity you want. And then there's a whole list of 1 million plus charity. I think it's like 15 million charities overall. Either way, if you're going to give, Charity on Top or Save the Brave. That's what I'm asking you to do. And if you're not giving, an adult, you got to figure out some way to get involved. All right, one more thing I'm going to say to you. And I'm telling you, this is such a good episode. Hang in there for the full 2 hours because it just keeps going and going and going. Just get a lot of chores done. Hang out with us. Here comes Chris Thomas King.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morata.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Chris Thomas King, and you're watching Break It Down.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, man, we got Chris Thomas King back on the Break It Down show, in part because we always appreciate what he's doing and everything. By the way, I'm in the Jump studio. It got too noisy with the jackhammer outside, so I had to hop inside. But Chris has put out a new album called Angola, and I want to talk about that. But I wanted to find out the status of your of Tabby's. Is it open and running? How is COVID? Because we did a show like right as COVID was, building into a small crest.
Yeah, Tabby's is it's kind of on the shelf because of, because of COVID-19, but it's we're in limbo. The business is just trying to hang on. The actual Tabby, Red Stick Social, is the name of the entertainment center where Tabby partnered with. And I think when we did a podcast, I think earlier this year, we were supposed to have like a grand opening in May to coincide with the New Orleans Jazz Festival, with the Baton Rouge Blues Festival. And in between that time, we were supposed to do some aesthetic things to the acoustics of the building, because it's this old 100-year-old building, but the acoustics haven't been treated. So music just reverberates all through the place. So wasn't ready for prime time. And so that's, things are just basically put on the shelf. Hopefully we can get it going maybe next spring, if we can survive COVID-19.
Right. Well, Are you pretty optimistic about the survival part?
50-50. I mean, we have some new management that came in, which have kind of, slowed things down a little bit. And we really haven't had any meetings on what we're going to do about tabbies, anything, in some months here. So I think we'll assess things toward the end of the year and kind of just see where we are, because the whole in Louisiana, where I'm at, we've been shut down, since early March, and it don't look like any live entertainment or music or festivals, anything like that, is going to be happening, until maybe next spring. If we can survive that long, then we'll make tabbies happen. But if not, if we don't survive the COVID-19 and we can't work things out, there's still a possibility that I might do like a tabbies museum or something in a different format, to try to, perpetuate this blues story and keep that culture alive, and preserve it, for new generations.
It's a beautiful space.
If we can't do it in a big commercial establishment, we might have to do it in a nonprofit setting. But so it's like everything else in America right now. It's in limbo, man. It's in limbo, and I don't know. I mean, we're hoping we can get back to business. I'm hoping I can get my band back on the road. But right now, I'm kind of worried about whether or not civilization is going to continue. I mean, it's pretty dark right now.
The space is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it'd be I'm a silver lining optimistic kind of guy. I work with a lot of touring musicians, and I specifically help manage and build brands for individual artists, not just the recording artist, the actual musician. And that's what I keep telling them. I'm like, look, I like to think with all major pushes in civilization, social change, it's always been forced out of really negative reasons, whether it's advancements in technology due to we have to do this because of the bad things going on. And it's kind of like when Napster came about, the first kind of a downloading or early streaming. It was a really kind of scary time, but then now it's we've all adapted to it, and now it's just everyone's used to making 1/10 of a penny on a stream. But I'd like to think that touring is going to come back, and I mean, but I'm curious, with tabbies, I'm such a music junkie and a music nerd. I'd love to hear a little bit of is that where you first got birthed into music, so to speak, because of what your dad was doing there, and what. Well, just kind of I'd love to hear a little bit of how that was a part of your childhood, or the inspiration that got you where you're here now. And I mean, because it's an absolutely gorgeous building, from the insides, all the brick, I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of potential there. I grew up right there where this building is. I mean, this building came in. I hear an echo. You guys hear that echo?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you have headphones? That might be the answer. I'm not sure exactly why it's doing it. I'm trying to figure it out on my end.
Look, I actually don't hear.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah.
I grew up right there. My dad's where this tabbies, what Red Stick Social is, that is to become tabbies. Back during the Storyville days of New Orleans, when they had this red light district, well, Baton Rouge had a red light district called on a street called Red Stick, and so it was kind of a zone where all the vices and stuff could happen without being bothered. And fast forward to 1979 is when my dad got an idea to open a little juke joint. He took over a grocery store there and converted it into a blues club. And this was at the height of disco and at the height of, when there weren't a lot of recognition or places to play for blues musicians in Louisiana. And he kind of brought back that whole kind of reconnected Louisiana, which is the birthplace of the blues, and kind of gave a new generation, guys like myself, of course his son. I was forced, to play at the family business, but and paid $15 $7 a night, But
how old were you when you started playing there?
Probably 14 or 15.
Nice.
But so he opened this place, and it became a hot thing. And even though it was a ramshackle little juke joint where the beer cooler didn't cool, the water closet didn't always work. but the music was always infectious. So, and it caught on. A lot of people that like the blues thing, they romanticize this downtrodden, kind of mythology about the blues, the some kind of backwood juke joint moonshine type of spot. And we didn't try to make it that, but that's kind of what it was. And so it started attracting tourists. Like sometimes we'd have buses pull up from unannounced, some French tourists or something would just pull up. And all of a sudden we had to try to accommodate, 70 tourists in the place and stuff. So it became a thing. But as my dad got a little bit ill, the city of Baton Rouge raised the place in 1999. And ever since then, I have been wanting to kind of reestablish it in some way, but without being like my dad, tethered to the business. I mean, it's running a little club like that, and then he performed and played there as well. I wouldn't be able to do acting. I wouldn't be able to do a lot of writing. I wouldn't be able to tour my band. I would be tied to a club, 24/7, 7 days a week. And I don't want to commit to that, at least not at this point. So having partners and coming up with a fabulous setup that like we have, these guys came in and it was like a gentrification kind of thing. The neighborhood, the Black neighborhood, very poor, but it's being gentrified. And this is one of the big gentrification things. And so there was a lot of pushback from the Black community, the community that I grew up in. And I think they brought me in as a public relations deal. But at the same time, it's like, man, I don't do this kind of thing. I'm not just some symbolic guy you hire. Right. And it's like, and I'm going to advertise your business and smooth over your public relations.
Don't check the box with my name.
Yeah, I'm not one of these kind of rappers that looking to do branding,
Yeah.
So it's like if I have ownership in the business, and then and if you guys want me to perform there, then these are the things we need to do. And if we want to create an atmosphere that's worthy of my dad's and my legacy, then here's my plan. And it was going to cost because they was going to have to modify the building, and there were some things that we needed to do, which they promised they would get to. And those things will be done hopefully by May of 2020, in time for Jazz Fest, Blues Festival season, and we would have a big grand opening. But COVID-19 put a damper on that. Some management changes put a damper on that. And right now, the business is just it's only open now. It's not even open. It's only doing takeout. Like you can, get some takeout food there or something. But with that kind of, lease and the kind of expenses that a place like that has, it's very tough to kind of survive this time we're in. So it's a commercial building. It's not a nonprofit, Blues Foundation kind of thing. So, because if it was, I could go to some oil companies and say, "Hey, man, break me off a little something." You know what I mean? There are some wealthy people out there that would be happy to contribute, to a community institution, like that. But that's not where we are right now. It's a commercial thing, and so we just have to see if it survives, and then we'll kind of reassess things. But my ownership in the building, and then not in the building, we have a lease, but my ownership in the business is it is what it is. But even if they turn it into an ice cream stand, I'm still a part owner. So it's not contingent on me performing there, or it's not contingent on it being converted into Tabby's. I'm still an owner no matter what they do until they buy me out. So that's kind of where we are,
Yeah, for those that aren't aware, Chris is obviously a musician and an actor, and I guess I'm trying to think, how do you describe your role in Lackawanna Blues? Like you're part actor, part pit band. What do you describe that role as? That's such a unique thing.
Lackawanna Blues, the play.
Yeah. What's your role in that? Would you say?
Oh, I'm an actor, but I'm also a film scorer and the music director of the play. Yeah. But I do all of that on stage. I compose the music that supports the play. And I'm on stage, performing the music, and I'm working with Ruben Santiago Hudson, who is just an amazing actor. He plays like 23 characters, I think, and voices women and men, in this play, as he tells this story about migration, people that migrated from the South up to New York, Lackawanna, New York, near Buffalo, and in the 1950s. And he grew up in a boarding home, and he talks about all the different characters and stuff and bring those characters to life in that place. And music was always happening in that space. And so that's what we recreate on stage with, it's a beautiful setting with lighting and set design and stuff that kind of brings you into that world. And we did the play in LA some months ago, and it was an amazing success. And right now, I guess this is a little breaking news, but we are going to Broadway in August. We begin in August of 2021 and run until the holidays, right around November. And the theater has an option, to continue it. So we're going to Broadway officially, like an official Broadway. I'll be in New York doing that if we can get past COVID-19, beginning in August of next year. So Lackawanna Blues is an amazing play. And, so we were hoping to get to Broadway.
I remember we talked about this.
Yeah. And so we're in negotiations right now, but I think all of that is going to be smoothed out. So yeah.
If you guys don't get it already, it's such a great, it's kind of a play, kind of a musical. And Chris really is on stage the entire time. That's why I kind of struggle to describe what he does, but he's making the soundtrack for this thing live with his guitar. And it's just such a fantastic, man, it's just such a great play. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for letting me come and watch it. It was at the Amundsen, I think, that we saw it. And what a treat. You guys definitely, if you're in New York, definitely go see it. Don't miss it out. And hopefully COVID won't keep you guys from being on stage, because it's a great couple of hours to spend with someone that you love and watch an amazing tale. Hey, let's talk about, I always want to talk about the history of the blues with you, but let's do that for another episode. Let's talk about Angola. This is your current thing, and it seems like you put this together pretty fast. I was listening to it and I thought, before I read your blog about it, but I heard the Marvin Gaye in it. I heard all the different influences. You don't care what genre something's in. You just go to where the art is. And I also heard a lot of like songs in the key of life kind of stuff, where we're taking the current times and putting it into your music. Tell us about Angola.
Yeah. Angola is my new album. It came out September 11th, digitally worldwide. So wherever people get music, they can check it out: Spotify, iTunes, Pandora, and just about anywhere else. And even at my website, christhomasking.com. But Angola, first of all, the name comes from the state prison here in Louisiana, which is called Angola, and they call it the Angola State Farm. And this was a notorious state prison. Not that it's not anymore, but it was one of the most notorious prisons in America. And chain gang leasing is what was their specialty. They created like these black codes and things to, get black people in chains, after slavery, and then they would lease them out to businesses to do all kinds of agricultural and levee work or whatever needed done, and needed to be done, railroad stuff and all of that, and so that's also where Lead Belly came out of, the Angola State Prison, and it's not far from where I live.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
And it's not far from where I live. So the album, I had the first single from the album, 9 Pound Steel, is a song that when you hear the introduction of the song, you hear there was a sample that I used of chain gang workers on the steel hitting the rocks and the grunts from the men. And I put that, sampled that and chopped it up a little bit and put it in time to the beat. So that's the backbeat of the tune. And then I used my guitar to create an ethereal type of setting for it by using, I'm not gonna get too technical, but a certain way you play the guitar and you make it sound kind of like a synth or something, and it create a bed, like an atmospheric bed. It might sound like a keyboard, but it's all guitar.
You can get technical. That's what I was going to be asking some of the nerdy gear questions. It's just like, well, no, what MIDI patches were you using? But
yeah, well, what I did is that running my Stratocaster guitar through a Lexicon PCM70 and using reverb and running it through another PCM70, and then you get that ethereal sound. That's the kind of sound, that haunting sound that you might find on what these guys that used to produce YouTube back in the 80s. They were known for that. The guy's name
Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno.
Yeah, Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno. That's one of their techniques. But they're usually using keyboards. I'm using a guitar and kind of creating something like that. So yeah, and so you welcome people to that sound, and then the tune is a cover of a Percy Sledge tune, which is a country soul type of thing. So that's to me, I had that song, a demo of that song sitting around and not quite knowing what to do with it, what album to put it on and things like that. And then, when this happened and I was watching after George Floyd was murdered and the whole world kind of stopped. I don't have television, so I normally see things. I normally listen to the news. I don't watch the news unless I see a clip or something online. But anyway, I was following the protests through Periscope and through people's cell phones and things. And after a day or two of watching that, then I decided I wanted to record the audio that I was hearing because I thought it was just amazing. And of course, the broadcast news channels like CNN and them, they don't, they really don't tell the story from the street. And after recording that, then I said, I just wanted to play some guitar or put some beats to it or do stuff. So I started experimenting with it, and that was the birth of the album. The songs 9 Pound Steel is the anchor, but then capturing the sounds of protest and the sounds of the uprising, and trying to use those voices and all that chaos, and trying to create some art out of that chaos which is what I was trying to achieve.
Did you have, similar to 9 Pound Steel, that was a demo prior going into it? Is that kind of how all the songs that made it were, roughly, demoed or put together? Like, how many did you have, conceptualized prior to this release, or did you have some that like immediately, once 9 Pound Steel, you had that kind of put together, then the rest kind of followed suit, or were these combined works you had going on prior?
Yeah, that's a good question. 9 Pound Steel was in kind of a demo form, on not unfinished, but the Bob Dylan tune that's on the album, I Shall Be Released. Right. I recorded that a while back, but just hadn't released it. And that's another song about a prisoner who is innocent, who is in prison, and he's waiting for hoping to get released or whatever. So that theme and then 9 Pound Steel, those kind of went together. But is there anything else? Yeah, there's another tune called Jenna, Louisiana, which I was actually recording for my new album. I mean, I wasn't planning on doing an album about George Floyd. I didn't know that was going to happen. Right. But Jenna, Louisiana was going to be on an album that I was working on. And that's the only song on the album that was going to be released this year that made it on this album. And that's another song about a young man in Jenna, Louisiana, where the police brutalized him like we've seen so many times on social media. And then he didn't have a weapon. And so they said his shoe was his weapon. and they tried to make it like his shoe was the murder weapon and all this, or the attempted murder weapon of the police, and they were going to lock this kid up for like a lifetime, if for the rest of his life. Al Sharpton came down and tried to bring some attention to the case and stuff like that. And so Jenna Louisiana is a true story that I kind of based that song on. And so, but everything else you hear is just things that I think those songs came together in a matter of a day or two. It really did. It was like just a burst of inspiration, over a couple of nights, and then it was just a matter of, where things, how to lay out the suite of songs, what would be the first song people would hear, and so on and so forth.
What was your? It's a stupid, well, not a stupid question, but I'd love to hear your response. I work with a lot of Jamaican musicians and a lot of reggae artists, but so I always, this question, why I say that is, did you go through just like a range of emotions when you were putting this together? Because from frustration, inspiration, like, how did you feel like when you were doing this? Like, and were you concerned at all about, the perception of it? Like, because there was no shortage. Yours was a very thoughtful piece of work, right? And then, but over the last like 5 months, there's been a lot of music coming out to put spotlight on what's going on and artists using their voice. Like, what was kind of how'd you feel like putting these together? And like when you actually saw the finished work, like, what was it? What's the response been like? What kind of range of emotions were you going through? This has been, probably a product of your entire life that you were able to kind of put into, a piece of work. Like, well, just give some insight to what that was like.
So that's not as much of a technical question as just my emotional thoughts behind what did it feel like putting it together. I don't know what to say to that. I'm kind of speechless because the technical aspects of it kind of overwhelms. The emotional thing happens in the performance, but it's all one take. I mean, I don't like do 2, 3, 4, 5 takes. It's not a long thing. Fortunately, I can go into the studio by myself and do the engineering, play all the different instruments, the bass, the guitars, the keyboards, sing the harmony. I can make an album. I know everybody was quarantining, and some artists can only just maybe get their guitar and sing online. But I was able to actually, play. I actually own a studio, have a recording studio, and I can go in the studio, engineer it, make an album, master it, do the whole thing myself if I choose to do that. And so I wasn't hindered by anything. But emotionally, it's hard. It was more technical than anything else. The emotional part is when I've kind of finally put it all together, and then I had to figure out how to put it together, because I love like what's going on. You mentioned what's going on, where songs just kind of seamlessly flow from one to the next. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? And it's not an album; it's digital, So, are people even going to listen to the thing as a piece of work, or are they going to just have it on a playlist, individual little
track by track
tunes? And and I'm thinking Pink Floyd, some of my Pink Floyd favorites. I'm thinking Marvin Gaye, and I'm like, I want this thing to go seamlessly, but I'm not even sure the digital websites allow you to do that. Maybe there will be a break in between the songs that I can control. So a lot of the stuff was technical. So I figured out a way to have one song stream into the next song and blend into the next song. And I kept a little motif tucked way underneath there. You hear just these two chords, these two minor chords going back and forth throughout the whole thing to kind of tie it all together. So it's really like one long suite of music that hopefully brings the listener in and then keep them there for a while. So it was more technical than emotional, except for the performance. Now, when I sit back and I give me some scotch or something, and I hear the final product, I hear the album kind of flow and say, okay, everything is working. Because every time I hear the music, I hear something wrong.
Mm.
I don't get the emotional burst that the person consuming it on the other end might get. For me, it's like I'm sculpturing something, and I got to keep chipping at it until I get something that I'm happy with, and I'm not happy with it until it's finalized. If that make any sense.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense.
So the
And I'm
emotional
glad.
payoff it comes much later, except for that burst of inspiration during the performance.
Well, and I guess like my question on the motion, like with like, was it like, obviously just probably a mix, and again, I feel like it's a stupid question, but I just, I try to understand.
But if you're talking about the Black experience,
exactly. Like, just obviously like,
what did it say in a social context about, where I stand in the world, or what my statement is? I think the music kind of speaks for itself, but a little bit of that has been in all of my albums all throughout the years. I've always been, I'm not necessarily a political writer. I'm no Bob Marley, don't get me wrong, but I'm no Bob Marley. I'm not Ice Cube or anything like that. But I haven't shied away from social issues and hints of politics and things, and the oppression, of Black people in America in my music. It's been in there pretty much from day one. And going back to probably the most antagonistic album that I recorded is an album that's hard to find these days, called 21st Century Blues from the Hood, which came out in the early 90s, which was the first rap hip hop blues album, which caused me to leave America and have to go live in Europe because blues festivals wouldn't book me. I was kind of banned, from the whole blues thing.
You didn't fit in their box.
And still today, I'm an outsider. You'll never, I don't, get blues recognition and things. I kind of operate, I'm a maroon, you know what I mean? I operate off the grid from the rest of the blues world, and I kind of do my own thing. And that's probably arrogance a little bit, but I don't think it's arrogance as much as it is in that I think I have the true philosophy of this music is wrapped up in my musical philosophy. And I just think that the blues establishment, from the Grammys to the Memphis Blues Awards, and all the stuff that folklorists have written in these books and these researches and stuff, all of that is like mythology, propaganda, bullshit, whitewashing, and thievery of my culture. So I've been going my own way, for decades. So this new album, it's a timely thing because the world sometimes is not ready to listen to a song like 9 Pound Steel. And that's why, fitting out on an album, it's too good of an album. It's too good of a song. Sometimes something is just too good to just throw it out there. But for a lot, not just for my music, but just in general, when it comes to white supremacy and what's wrong with this society and how structural racism works, it just so happens that the world stopped. People had time for reflection, and I have a song on the album called "The Reckoning," and so we're in a reckoning right now where all these institutions are kind of coming out and confessing, yes, I was always a racist institution, but I'm trying to do better. Like LA Times, I think, just came out this week saying that, apologizing for being a racist, white supremacist newspaper for its entire history, and kind of promising to make amends, and that's happened with National Geographic. It's happened with museums. I think the Oscars is saying that you have to have a certain amount of Black talent behind the scenes as writers, producers, actors in a movie, or else you're not going to be qualified to be movie of, what it is, the movie of the year, Oscar or something. Then you won't qualify if you don't have these things happening. So everybody, all these businesses is going through that. Now, I'm not naive. I know that businesses are just trying to survive. They're just trying to put some lipstick on this pig.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that are doing a PR move out of it. And,
exactly.
And that's why, kind of like with my question, asking, because there's been a lot of artists putting out, topical music over the last 4 months. And it's that kind of that, it's tough. I work with some of these artists that have been putting music out or decided not to put music out because, they've been doing a message, this has been your entire life, right? So it's not, you putting this music out now isn't a PR move, right? This is just the embodiment of your entire fucking life and saying like, well, now's the time I fucking need to put this out. And that's where like, I think it's been an interesting challenge, people trying to find their, the voice during this to make sure it's not like, oh, I don't want to be perceived as a PR thing, or I've represented reggae artists and Jamaican artists since I've been doing my LLC, and it was kind of it hit me at the start. Well, really over the last 6 months of I've always me and my clients, especially in Jamaica, ask the questions like, well, why has reggae never really blown up in the States? And it's it's kind of similar to how jazz, blues, it's always been just kind of put into a and I don't say it lightly, a systemic oppression of the genre, of who's controlled the record labels from when, what really popularized the rap category in hip hop. It was gangster rap and NWA, which was, put out by big record producers to then paint this picture or perception of a culture. It's similar with reggae. Everyone thinks, oh, white kids, Bob Marley and weed, where, it's deeper than that. So I appreciate that insight and letting me stumble through the question, because it's I think it's important for people to hear from an artist like yourself who this isn't a relevant, this has been my entire life, like this is.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been, when I say we, I mean Black people in America, we've always been painted as the monster. We're the monster, the big bad monster that's gonna
jazz,
come.
the devil's lettuce, like yeah, man.
Yeah. So, we've always been the monster. And sometimes you fight against that image or that stereotype. And then sometimes you play with it. Sometimes you become Caliban, and, like the Shakespearean, Moor, who was the monster or whatever. Sometimes you become the monster and you say, hey, and you use it, what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've flipped the script and done that sometimes in my albums, and sometimes, and that kind of antagonizes my audience and try to wake my audience up. But at the same time, blues have been it's not even the blues as we know it today is not a Black musical genre.
No, I mean, when there's
it's like a poor man's rock genre,
Yeah. Oh, there's guitar players out there like Eric Gales that he should have a similar platform like a Joe Bonamassa does. And, it's not taken away from, some of these artists that are on these huge platforms, but, it's disproportionate to the opportunity of the authentic scene, the authentic musicians, versus, again, who's getting popularized, who's getting more of the opportunities of playing, blues, which, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, same as it ever was, I mean, one of the people that I kind of model myself after is Jelly Roll Martin, and Jelly Roll Martin, was like, ahead of his time and doing his thing. But when you compare what Jelly Roll Martin was making in his heyday in the 1920s to what Al Jolson was doing, I mean, Al Jolson made millions and packed arenas all over the place, But I don't think anybody today, if you had a choice, you wanted to be remembered as like a Jelly Roll Martin or Al Jolson. I think most people would choose Jelly Roll. So just because you're the guy that's selling out a theater, there's lots of Al Jolsons in the world today. You know what I mean? And let them have it. You know what I mean? But someone like me, I'm not going to put on blackface and try to compete with Al Jolson. I'm gonna stay true to my art and stay true to myself. And when all of when people become embarrassed and shamed and have to apologize and go through all this stuff about why they wore blackface and Al Jolson, he didn't really mean it. He was really a good person, but and all that old bullshit. I don't have to do that. I don't have to make apologies. So.
Have you found that hard throughout your career, like day in, day out? Because, a lot of people outside looking in would see an artist like yourself and they, assume, make big assumptions, or same with a lot of touring acts of just like, oh, they have it made. Oh, they're super, they're just rolling into all this stuff. Like, what's it been like staying true to your art craft and not to use the word selling out, but I mean, like, what's that been like?
It's been like I said earlier, I mean, it's been difficult because I had to move to Europe. I left America. I wasn't planning on coming back. I was an expatriate, living in London, and eventually moved. Spent some time in France, and then ended up living for a couple of years in Copenhagen, in Denmark. And I had no plans to come back to America. And so it's been a struggle. Now while I was in Scandinavia, they didn't have Black radio stations there. They didn't have those kinds of boxes and boundaries and stereotypes, for me. So it was actually in Copenhagen that I created what I would call my first, album in my true voice, which was 21st Century Blues from the Hood, which was an album that I couldn't get made in America. I was recording for Warner Brothers at the same time that Ice-T and Body Count was recording for Warner Brothers. And his album came, he was on Sire Records, Warner Brothers. I was on the same label. We were the only two Black guys on the label. And we were both he was coming from hip hop and merging the guitar. I was bringing the guitar and hip hop together. Because at the time, everybody was saying that hip hop isn't real music because, it's not played with guitars and real musicians. Well, one of the worst things you can do in America is be a Black man, playing a guitar, and playing this rebellious music, thumbing your nose at the establishment and stuff. I mean, that's the last thing that, that people in America wanted to promote. But in Europe, people were totally excited about it, and that album did really well. And there's a lot of reasons for that. That goes back to Chuck Berry. It goes back to the beginning. Like I said, we're painted as the monster, and sometimes that's a good thing to use that in your art. But then sometimes, it's a hindrance, as far as getting your message and getting your music, out to the people. And speaking of art, I mean, I see all this through the guise of art. You know what I mean? I mean, art. If this was athletics, like a tennis court where everybody's playing by the same rules, and everybody get a volley, 15 love, whatever, playing by the same rules, then that's a different thing. Then you can really measure a person's talent against another's. But in art, it's all subjective, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of fakery that goes on.
Well, unfortunately, because a lot of it, it's a commercial business, right? Like you get to blur that line of to being a professional musician where it's, there's the commercial aspect to it. And so it's always, the respect that, I got for a guy like you who has maintained a career to find that balance to not, where you're balancing the art form, but then also the commercial viability of it to allow you to continue doing the art form as a career. And how have you balanced that? I guess, you've kind of been answering it by, going expat and going out to the UK to be able to, find the voice there versus out here. And
well, I mean, I think by blues standards, I'm probably the most. It's ironic, because I'm not here complaining about my career. Don't get me wrong, but and just to kind of, for people that are listening that don't know my history and maybe don't know some things, let me just lay a little foundation of something. I think I've sold more records than any other blues artist in America in the 20th century. I've sold maybe about 13 million albums, 13 million records. Of course, a big bulk of that was from Old Brother Where Art Thou? And then Down from the Mountain went platinum, a song that I wrote called John Law Brenda and the Liquor Store went platinum. And that sold over 1 million copies. And the Ray Charles movie that I did, co-starred in with Jamie Foxx, the score to that movie, we did 2 albums from Ray. And that was, I don't think it went platinum, but it hit the top of the Billboard charts. And then albums that I do on my own, they have done very well too. So by commercial standards, as far as my records go, I don't think any of the blues artists, white or black or Asian or Native American, have sold more records than I have sold. I've played to sold out Carnegie Hall a couple of times, not on my own, but co-headlining with other artists. the theater in Harlem, Radio City Music Hall a couple of times, Red Rocks, the Greek Theater a few times in LA, all the great theaters, all the great halls. I've done all of that. Nashville, what's it called in Nashville?
There's Ryman, Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, the Grand Ole Opry. I've done the Grand Ole Opry. Matter of fact, I got Album of the Year Bluegrass award here. I've been a CMA Album of the Year award. I have Grammy Album of the Year. I've won several Grammys. So, I mean, I have all those successes. So, I have the commercial success. So I know what that is. I'm not, trying to, I'm not reaching or trying to get known or I've had success in the music, right. especially as a blues artist. So now as far as the structure of the music business, the way that works is I own my own music, I own my masters, I own all of my publishing and all of my songwriting. So I'm only licensing music to Universal, to Sony and places like that. So I don't have a publishing deal with anybody, and I've been producing my own masters and owning my own music since the early 90s. When I came back from Europe, I did my own thing. Now, when you're doing your own thing, it's a cartel. The music business is a cartel. These are gangsters, man. You can't go sell tickets to a concert without Ticketmaster selling the tickets, Clear Channel plays the records. If you don't give Clear Channel $300,000, $400,000, they're not going to play your record. And on and on. And all these, and Clear Channel and Ticketmaster and these booking agencies that control all the major festivals, Coachella and all that stuff, this is a cartel. And if you're not signed and owned by that cartel, then you're blocked. And I'm okay with that. I don't mind working with the gangsters, but I got to get my fair share. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most people make a lot of money for the business, but the money stays with the business. You can't leave the room with the money.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're chasing money and you want to have some kind of success in the music business, there's only two ways to do it. I don't care if you're Frank Sinatra or B.B. King. They were all managed by the mob, and the mob is just gone legit. They call William Morris Agency, CAA. This is the mob, but it's legit now. So, I mean, because I know the blues. I mean, Duke Ellington and King Oliver and Louis Armstrong, and they played for the mob, Al Capone. So they went to Chicago after they closed Storyville down, the red light district in New Orleans down. These guys moved up to Chicago to work for the gangsters in Chicago. When moonshine was illegal, then they can do all their stuff. So it just so happens that the mobsters in New York said, "Hey, man, I really like that band from New Orleans. Can you send them over here for a couple of weeks to play at my speakeasies?" And then I guess the gangsters started sharing this music, and then they started saying, "Hey, man, I'm gonna need a percentage if you're gonna take my hot group over to New York for a couple of weeks. Then I need to get a cut, And then they opened up Vegas, and they established themselves in LA, and now they call it the William Morris Agency. It's gangster. So that's it. That's the business. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what it is.
What it is. Yep.
And I'm saying that sometimes you can make $1 million in the music business and still not get a check. Sometimes it's better to just, sell 10,000 records out the backseat of your car, and make $10 a record, and you made $100,000.
The Nipsey Hussle analogy: make your own mixtapes, sell them at $1,000 a pop.
Yeah. And now there's not even record stores. So why would you sign your life away to these people? Why would you sign your life away when everybody's just streaming music anyway?
Yeah. And I think, the point of my question is.
Yeah, and used to be you'd have a clause in your contract that say that you can audit the record company, to see how many records they printed, so you can make sure you're getting paid. And your accountants and lawyers could verify that. but there's nobody in the world that I know of that can audit Apple or audit Spotify and find out exactly and look at their books and see if they got paid, for their streaming as according as to what's supposed to be. And I don't know any accountant that would even know how to deal with that. And all the minutia of all the intricate little cents that was paid in Chile and Argentina and all. I mean, what accountant can even deal with this madness? So the way the business is structured now, if you're not already bounded by these cartels, there's no reason to do it at this point, unless you're desperate, and you really need a lump of money up front. Then go for that. I'm not knocking it. And I'm not knocking being a gangster, I'm not prudish. I'm not a Puritan or some prudish guy, So I'm just saying that that's what it is. But so the way that we measure success, especially when you have black people blocked out of the playing field, like Grambling University, I'm changing the subject a little bit, but to give you an analogy, if you won a football or basketball championship at a time that black people weren't allowed to play basketball, that's an embarrassing championship to put up in your trophy case. Is that a championship at all? Because I'm sure that Grambling would have beat the lights out of Alabama back in the 50s and 60s. You know what I mean? Because all the best players played for the black schools. They weren't allowed to go to Ole Miss and Mississippi State and places like that. So now these people dominate college football because they get the best players, and the best players, 9 out of 10 are black players. So I think when you put my catalog of my music or the things that I've been able to do in context, not in context of fairy tales and folklore and a bunch of whitewashed bullshit as what history is, but when you put it in proper context, I think that I don't know what more I could have done commercially. I don't know what more I can do creatively, but I've found some success on my own terms, and I think I do understand how difficult that is. But I don't think I'm competing with anybody. I think you mentioned Joe Bonamassa. I hate to name somebody, but he's competing with Keith Richards in my book, Jimmy Page. He's not really competing with me and the guy that you mentioned from Memphis.
Well, and vice versa. I don't think you probably wouldn't consider yourself competing with them, and that was like my point of the question, and I appreciate that elaborate answer, because it's like, to me, you are the model of success, right? It's not about how the huge album advances you're getting or huge publishing advances you're getting. It's like that balance of having that commercial success that you've had, but then still being able to be true to your art form and be true to yourself, like every step of the way. And because that's the tough thing. I think so many professional musicians, it's tough to do what you've done, right? To have literally that kind of statistics. You flip over the Chris Thomas King, professional musician baseball card thing. It's just stat. But then people might be like, and this is, this is stuff that frustrates me. It's like, who's Chris Thomas King? You're just like, come the fuck on. No, it's not the dude from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Well, yes, it is, but it's just like, so it's, your answer is spot on. I mean, it's not, that is success, right? And I think it's, more, up and comers need to hear that stuff and more.
Well, and that's why I appreciate you guys giving me this forum, because I get a chance to speak in more than just a sound bite or a quoted in a sentence or two, So, but as far as people knowing who I am, I couldn't tell you who's playing baseball in the World Series this year. I have no idea. And I couldn't tell you who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. And I mean,
do you even know that the playoffs started in baseball? Do you have any idea at all?
I don't, to be honest with you.
I love it. Yes.
So I'm just saying that, I mean, if you're not paying, if you're into the blues, then you're going to know who Chris Thomas King is. But I'm not, I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? I kind of know where my lane is, and I kind of do my thing here. But I'm here if people want to find me. I mean, but I'm not concerned with being on these foolish TV shows and stuff, and they don't even pay you when you're going like the Tonight Show. I mean, I went on David Letterman and stuff. They didn't hardly want to pay. It's like
I learned the hard way. One of my good friends, Alex Rivas, she's the tour manager for Chronics, and they
don't pay enough money on these TV. They don't pay you nothing.
No,
they want you to come and do it for free.
They did
man, I'd rather play in a joint in New Orleans to a rowdy little crowd or something, man, and get more satisfaction than being on some ridiculous show that nobody that really cares about my music is really watching anyway. So I'm not here to be like I never saw. I don't think Bob Marley would have been on Singing Search or Star Search, whatever these things are called, Dancing with the Stars. Now, I mean, this stuff is like that's why I don't watch television. I try to follow the news. I watch live events like live sports or some breaking news or something. But generally, man, a lot of this stuff numbs our minds, and that's why this is a dark time, but an enlightened time that we're living in, because people finally had a chance to not go to work, to not, be on the grind, be on the treadmill, and had a chance to kind of think about things and get beyond just a click or two and kind of absorb the fact that African Americans who are still poor and every immigrant have come in and passed us by. Is it because there's something wrong with us innately? Are we just subhuman people that no matter how much money you throw at us, we're going to still be in poverty? So it's a waste of money to invest in these communities and invest in people? Or should we just try to lock up as many of them up as we can, to warehouse them in these prisons, which is kind of what I'm hitting at with Angola.
Right.
Or are we just as human as everybody else? And this is just a racist ass, country that we live in. And, and it's designed for you to be in this position. And for people just, Anglo people just can't hear what you're saying. But all of a sudden this summer, people have been able to hear us. Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick is not playing in the NFL, but do you want to just be a journeyman in the NFL? Or do you want to be somebody that one day they're going to build a statue to, which is Colin Kaepernick? Colin Kaepernick is the modern day, like the lady that sat down on the bus and didn't get off, He's an icon of this movement, and he was demonized by all the NFL people years ago. So sometimes you just have to choose your path. And I'm not saying everybody should be a Colin Kaepernick or everybody should be a Chris Thomas King. Neither am I comparing myself to Kaepernick, but I'm just saying you got to choose your path and let time. And when people are ready for you and ready to accept what you're doing, you're there. And like I work in art, so you got artists like Basquiat, who's painting, trying to find one of his paintings today, which he was handing it out on the street in New York, at one time. But now, if you don't have like $30-40 million, you might not be able to get a Basquiat painting. So in art, sometimes it's subjective, and everybody don't get it all at the same time. It takes time sometimes too. But hopefully, the music that I'm producing will have a long shelf life and have some meaning to people, even when I'm not here, and as opposed to just a quick commercial buck, selling detergent or some perfume or something.
So we're not going to see you on Tide Pod commercials.
Let me get it back to Angola for a minute then, because we do want to promote the album. Where is the place that most benefits you to have people spin it? I mean, is it Spotify? Is it somewhere else?
It benefits me wherever, because like I said, most of my catalog, I own it all. So it comes directly to me.
And if you guys look on the screen, you'll see the link to Spotify. If you type in Chris Thomas King in Spotify, you'll find it. And I've been curious about this because we talked about the last album, and you truly make albums. You were talking about it earlier. And in the last one, you had the Jelly Roll Suite. And it's hard to even find someone mention the side A, side B difference. And yet it's almost like it's two EPs. They're so different in construction. And then you talked about the album construction on this one, and I think you're you nailed it. When I listened to it, I heard the Pink Floyd thing where you could just let that thing play in a half-hour long loop, and it'd almost be hypnotic. Like you wouldn't have to turn it off, because what the Black community experiences is cyclical. You go right back to the chants in the streets. Like, goddamn, how many times do we have to go through this, right? So I love that you did that. And I see your smile, because I guess I'm getting that right, that I got it. But the question I have is, the construction of an album, is that important anymore?
No.
Okay.
It's kind of old fashioned. It's kind of arcane, actually, to even think about music and albums. And that was part of the challenge, Peter, because my thing was I'm trying to get people to listen at this as a suite of music, as a body, of music with some different movements and things. And I'm dealing with an audience, a blues audience, that's been trained to not even think of blues as being art. I mean, it's like, but that was the challenge. How do I sequence the album? How do I tie it together to make it have that kind of meaning? And I found some little technical loops, some kind of little things that I could figure out to do that, to force the servicers to, when they put it up, there is no space in between the songs. Mm-hmm. And I made sure the songs bled over each other, but at the same time, they have to have a particular marker, so that if somebody do want to put individual songs on a playlist, or if it's put it on a CD into your CD player, it's separated. It's not just one long song. So I think Prince had an album called Love Sexy that just goes straight through. And if you want to skip through it, good luck with that. You know what I mean? And but Pink Floyd is somebody I kind of grew up on, really digging the way they put albums together. And the Final Cut is one of my it's not the most popular album, but it's one of the ones that I really like by them. And it's a kind of quiet, one of their quieter albums. But yeah, and then as far as storytelling with the album, of course it starts with the chant, George Floyd, and I'm trying to get the rhythm on the guitar, and then it goes into a song called "The Flag," which is I spoke about Colin Kaepernick. It's kind of like taking a knee, to the national anthem. Now the thing about that is, and then you hear the police sirens, and when you hear this bell ringing, just so people know, when I'm watching on Periscope, when the marchers would come down the street, they were coming down the street in Manhattan, and there was a guy with his camera, this white guy with a camera, and they had some other white guy, but they had their faces covered, and they broke the windows into this jewelry store. Was it a jewelry store or some kind of, upscale store? And then the bell started going off, in the store for the break-in, and they would go right ahead of the marchers and break in. And then when the marchers came down the street, they were expecting the marchers to go run in there, and the protesters go run in there and take. And then they were there with their cameras ready to film it, so they can use it for propaganda, And they were, and then when the marchers came, the leaders of the march stood in front of the place that was broken into, and they told everybody to keep going. Don't take the bait. Keep going. Everybody keep going and keep marching. And so in one of the songs, you hear the bell ring, and then you hear the guy saying, "I'm getting out of here. It's not worth it. I'm going to my car," or something. Yeah. But he had just got chewed out. I couldn't put the whole thing on there, but he had just got chewed out by one of the marchers saying, "Who are you with? Who sent you here? Who you with? Who you with?" And you just know he's with some kind of right-wing propaganda website or whatever, and they use this information to try to create. Because the guys that broke in the store, they didn't even go in and take anything. They just broke in, and then they were waiting for the marchers to come.
It was the same here in Portland.
The cameras in good position, everybody's ready, but these guys chewed this guy out, and they didn't jump on him. But then you could tell he was pretending to be interested in the march. But when they didn't go into the store and loot it, then he just say, "I'm going home. It's not worth it. So he was going to his car, But if you were really following the march and documenting the march, why not just follow them and keep walking with the marchers to see where they're going or whatever? You know, he wasn't interested in that. He was there to capture propaganda. And, you know, so the album can't tell the whole story, but I was just trying to tell a story that people are not seeing, you know, probably in the CNNs and these kinds of networks. They're not designed for that. And that's kind of the beauty. You know, social media, it has its aspects for giving voice to people, you know, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of misinformation and propaganda out there. And, you know, and the sad thing is that, you know, especially after Donald Trump's, you know, bizarre, you know, crazy debate, if you want to call it that. The sad thing is that it's not Donald Trump that is our problem. There's a third of Americans that is the problem. And there's a third of Americans we can't be civilized, you know, as long as we have a third of people who are still back in the dark ages, you know. And that's the dilemma. But the CNNs of the world, they can't call these people out because the advertisers need these people, you know, and they don't want to alienate a large block of their audience, but they keep pointing at Donald Trump, and he is not the main problem. He's just the leader of these people, and these people are holding us back. You know, the ignorance can't be penetrated. You can't even penetrate their ignorance.
No, they'll justify it in some way.
Yeah, and so what's shocking to me, I'm not shocked by a lot, but what's shocking to me is that there's such a low, I mean, I can see 10%, 15% maybe, but I just can't see 40%, a third of this country being so ignorant, willfully ignorant, you know? You can't even penetrate the ignorance. So you're not able to show them the facts. You're not able to show them science that wearing a mask, you know, is scientifically is going to help you not spread the virus. I mean, and then you got people that want to argue against that, demon semen, all kind of just crazy shit. It's like, you know, we just, you know, they want to bring us back to the dark ages, you know, build a wall and fill the moat with alligators. What is this, King Arthur? I mean, this is like, it's insane. So, but the media who gave us Donald Trump by putting his rallies on TV when he didn't have money to even buy advertisement, that's how they got him elected, because they were desperate for the money. And they sold us out, and they're probably going to sell us out again, because they really shouldn't have any more debates with this man. They really should just cancel the debates and not give him that airtime, because he can't afford to buy it. We know he's broke, you know, and I don't think anybody's going to give him any money, because he's just going to steal the money, and he's not going to put it into the campaign anyway. So he's going to take your campaign money and
pay his taxes
and stash it somewhere, use it to pay off some debt or whatever. And so it's like, but the news media want those clicks. They want that. They want to create a Super Bowl, you know, and have people watching for advertisers and stuff. And so they're not helping. You know,
well, it's that cartel you were talking about, right? They got to sell Cadillacs. They got to sell soap. And if they can't do that, they can't exist, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's not that complicated to plant an apple tree, water it, take care of it, and then go and pick you an apple. But we have a society that they have to figure out how to not only make money off you getting that apple, they got to make an obscene amount of money off of you getting the apple. And getting an apple is a fresh egg is just not. It don't have to be that complicated, you know. But they got to squeeze, not just make money. We understand you got to make money, but do you have to make some obscene amount of money in order to get me that apple so I can have a fresh apple to eat? You know, so the structure of our society is on the brink, and I think that the problem is once you get rid of Donald Trump, there'll be another one, you know. But the problem is a third of this country just is not ready to move forward into the 21st century, but they don't have a choice. But we have to figure out, we can't apologize for the truth, and we can't apologize for science, and we can't apologize for facts. They just have to accept that. And if they don't accept it, then I guess as a society, we have to figure out, well, what we're going to do about that. Are we going to just live with all this craziness, or are we going to try to do something about it? Because, our children, we can't go to school, we can't go to work. I'm not going to be playing a gig anywhere to promote. You asked me about promoting my album. I'm hoping that I can make it to Broadway in August of next year. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's like a year from now. I'm hoping that we can get back to some kind of normalcy, or get things open again. But we're never going to get them open again if people don't wear a goddamn mask. I mean, a mask. We're just talking about wearing masks, man. They got on pants. They don't show up butt naked at the grocery store. But if you tell them to put on a mask, they got a weave on. They got some plastic surgery, but they can't put a fucking mask on. Yep. What the fuck is that? This shit is insane.
I don't know if you guys saw the South Park episode special last night where they did this pandemic special thing and just making fun and poking fun at all this stuff, and they were talking the mask thing just because so many people were like, just put them on their chin or below the nose, and so they're calling them chin diapers on the episode last night, and they're like, put your chin diaper over your nose. And,
I miss South Park, man. Sometimes they can.
Dude, you got to watch the one yesterday. It was like an hour-long special, all about what's been going on over the last 5 months. The police aspect, it's because they're so relevant. That's why they sustained that for so many years. Is because they're the world serves them up all of their episodes, and I would highly encourage you. I'm not endorsed by fucking South Park. I'm from Colorado, but I would check it out.
I love it. And the thing about it, South Park. Let's bring this back to music a little bit.
Yeah.
South Park, the national anthem, the song on my album called "The Flag," which uses the national anthem. To me, that's bluing. That's blue entertainment. Mm-hmm. It's naughty. It's not fit for polite society, so to speak. It's a French word that we in Louisiana have kind of that we apply to our music called blue. Like soccer blue. Holy shit, And so the blues, that's the name, that's what the genre of music that's the philosophy behind it, is that it's subversive, it's a provocative, it's free expression, it's the First Amendment and philosophy embodied in music. And so it's free expression, but what made it so powerful is that it came out of free expression from the old Victorian prudishness and the sensuality of the blues kind of mixed. And the fact that the blues kind of everything that the WASP society held sacred, the blues was designed to upset it, to piss on it, so to speak, to say, hey, man, I'm not going to convert, I'm going to stay true to my culture and true to myself, and I'm going to blue this thing or creolize it, and do it my way. So I'll play your national anthem, Jimi Hendrix, but I'm going to do it. Going to put my spin on it. I'm going to subvert it or convert it to my thing. So when I'm doing the flag and I'm kind of using the national anthem, but I'm taking a knee. I mean, the national anthem, the lyrics to that thing, it was like a slave. They were talking about, it's really a slave anthem, but they took a couple of verses out that had to do with slaves, but they kept the whole other parts of it. And I just think it should be thrown away anyway. I think we got enough talent here to write a better national anthem than what we have. And we can probably come up with some lyrics that can include Native Americans, African Americans, Europeans, Asians. It can include everybody, in our mythology. It's okay to lie. It's okay to, every country kind of need a mythology to rally around, because the truth is always, you can't rally around the truth, So you need a mythology. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that include me don't make me out
in
to
the
be
mythology. Yeah.
I have to play the monster in this role? Yeah. So we have Walt Disney, creating these Snow White and Hansel and Gretel and all these fairy. They tell you it's a fairy tale. Then why can't the prince be Asian? That come and kiss the lady. Oh no, we can't do that because it has to be blue-eyed, blonde hair, Norwegian-looking person. But I thought this was a fairy tale. Does it really matter? I mean, it could be a bear that comes to kiss her. Would they rather have a bear do it than they would have an Asian man do it? You know what I mean? Or a black man, or whatever. You know, so these fairy tales and folklore that we have built the society on, it is a lie. But at least let's lie and say everybody is great, everybody is exceptional. You know, we all are one kind of thing. Let's do it that way. You know, but bluing the blues is not the definition that they try to give you from the Mississippi Delta and plantation and all that. It really comes out of New Orleans. It's an enlightened music. And the music philosophy behind it is an enlightened music about freedom of expression. When you take a solo and get past what the conductor have written down and that real Sosa stiff march music, and then you take that and kind of improvise and do your own free thing with it, that's freedom of expression musically. That's the philosophy behind the blues. It's to break free of this WASP, Victorian prudish tradition, which is hypocritical anyway. You know, it's hypocritical. So, you don't have to aspire to that. You can kind of do it your own way. And that's the philosophy that runs through my music. And I feel that the blues as we know it, ostensibly, the way that the Grammys deal with the blues, the way Memphis Awards deal with the blues, and the kind of people that they're awarding, it don't really have anything to do with Black music or Black culture. And Black people don't even come to the concerts or blues shows and stuff. It really is not it doesn't represent African-American music. It's really something that's kind of been hijacked and a whole different story that have been told. And I was just saying, I've talked to Peter about this in the past. And for people that are listening that's maybe a little confused, I just need to give you a little background. When people tell you that the blues came from the Mississippi Delta, they have to remember that the Mississippi Delta only goes back to the early 1900s, like 1910, 1905. There were never any Black slaves in the Mississippi Delta. There were never any Black people in the Mississippi Delta during antebellum times. And blues started in New Orleans in the 1890s before there were even Black people in the Mississippi Delta. So this whole idea about, and all these early blues musicians, they weren't born in the Mississippi Delta. They were born south of Jackson, like, things like this. And just to be clear, no white people were in the Mississippi Delta either until Andrew Jackson moved those Indians, those Native Americans, Chickasaw and Choctaw Indians out of the Delta during the Trail of Tears around 1840, around the 1830s or so. They finally got the last of those people out of there. And so these people come in from Appalachia and places and come in there and take that land and take those people businesses. And they didn't do that until like the 1840s. And that was the first white men to come in there. But the Black people never really did anything in the Delta. There never was any slaves there. So this idea that the blues came from slavery and all this stuff here is just not true. It took them 50 years after the Civil War to clear the Delta, to build some levees, to get, and Stovall bought his plantation, I think, in 1895. And that's the Stovall plantation is where Charlie Patton and the blues supposedly started. But that plantation didn't open up until the 1900s. But in New Orleans, Buddy Bolden, Jelly Roll Martin, King Oliver, Lonnie Johnson, all these people had already established the blues. The blues had been there and gone by the time that it made its way to Mississippi. And then even the way it made its way to the Delta, after the New Orleans musicians left Louisiana and went to Chicago and started recording in Indiana and then Chicago, they made records. And Lonnie Johnson, the New Orleans guitar player, Lonnie Johnson, his records from 1925 started making its way to the Delta. And these plantation workers like Charlie Patton and them will go to the commissary store. They'd get paid in Delta cash. So they couldn't use the money outside the plantation. So they would purchase things from the plantation store. And they would go to the plantation store and they would hear this music coming out of Chicago, from the New Orleans musician. And that's where you get Robert Johnson writing songs like Sweet Home. He want to go to Sweet Home Chicago. And everybody's talking about getting the hell up out to Delta and going and be like Lonnie Johnson. And so they didn't even hear this music until they heard it on wax. They didn't even know it existed. And then the first Delta songs come out like in 1928, 29. And, and then later in the 1960s, these folklorists and social scientists and stuff, what they did is they decided to try to create a false backstory for the blues to fit this idea so that white guys can go in and take this music and call it rock and roll and they're great artists and they're geniuses and all of this stuff here. And they had stole all this music from these people. They had stole all this music, but they created a fake backstory about the crossroads and all this stuff that never happened. It's not Black history. It doesn't have anything to do with Black history. And so my music is based, and my whole music philosophy, and yes, I do, that's not an oxymoron. You can be a blues musician and have a philosophy, you know what I mean? Yeah. And be able to spell it, So my whole music philosophy comes out of New Orleans Enlightenment, and it made its way to Chicago. It eventually made its way to New York, and people called it swing, they call it jazz, they call it all these other kinds of names, just so they can kind of co-opt it, But underneath it all, it is the blues. And so it's designed to make, people, polite society upset and bring attention to, something that you might be wanting to bring attention to as an artist, I mean, like NWA coming out, F the Police, which I have a song on my album called The Police. My wife talked me out of calling it F the Police, but you have songs like this to point out with music, that something is wrong here and that you don't, you're disrespecting something they hold sacred. So sacre blue means that you're cursing something that's sacred. But what is sacred about the national anthem is that it's an oppressive anthem, for Black people. And, the police in their current configuration is oppressive. So as protests have it, like the Black Lives Matter protest, and like my album Angola, it's a protest album. So it don't respect these institutions because they're not worthy of respect. I don't respect our current president because he's not worthy of it. And so in this country we have something called freedom of expression, and that's almost the definition of the blues. To express your angst or your to be subversive. But let me just qualify it just a little bit because we talked about South Park. Anybody can just curse and anybody can just say some old crazy stuff. You know what I mean? But what makes it art? When Richard Pryor, he was a blue comic, but he could take reality. Him and Chappelle, they can take blue entertainment and raise it to an art form. I mean, I don't like that Chappelle uses the N-word, so much and all this, but he can take that and turn it into art and make you think, and kind of, get your mind open to some new ideas. And so the challenge is not to just be offensive like a lot of our hip hop is today, but sometimes people were being offensive to shock people into a new reality. You don't want people to suppress your freedom of expression. So there's a fine line, as opposed to just being filthy or just being subversive, just for subversive sake. That's not what the blues is. It's a higher thing that you're trying to reach, and you're trying to enlighten society and bring society, out of a kind of darkness, if you will. And
hey, Chris, when does your book come out? Is it almost done? I know you've been working on it for a while. And then who was your partner that you were writing it with? Isn't there a historian or somebody?
It's available right now on Amazon. You can pre-order it on Amazon. The book is called The Blues, The Authentic Narrative of My Music and Culture. and it's up for pre-order right now on Amazon, but it doesn't come out officially. It won't be released until June of next year.
Okay, I'm going to put that link up on here, and we've had you for long enough that my battery's about to die on my computer. So look,
I feel like we're just getting started, man.
I know,
Oh, man, I know.
I haven't even gotten to get into. I haven't gotten even to ask the gear
place.
questions yet. I mean, like I'm such a guitar junkie, and you're talking about expression earlier. You know, I always love asking like some of these questions of, you know, like what comes first. You know, the melody or the lyrics, one and the same to you. I mean, I want to get into like what was your, you know, when you got your hands on your first, whether it was, you know, Gibson, Fender, like what was that first moment where you like bonded with an instrument, the Explorer on your website? Like, I mean, there's like, I see the headstock behind it. It doesn't look like a Fender, but I'd be curious what kind of like boutique single coil guitar that is that you got back there. Like,
so that's a bass guitar.
is that a Modulus or what is?
That's a Music Man bass guitar,
All right.
5-string. And I've been recording all my albums with that. I play bass on just about all my albums. I have a great touring band, Jeff Mills and Danny Infante, but obviously we aren't able to get together these days. Yeah, man, I can talk shop. I mean, I don't get to talk shop that much. Most people are so bored by that.
Oh, no way, not me, man. So I'll bore the audience. I don't know what kind of time we got, but like, let me start with this. Like, what was that first guitar you got?
I can get my power cord. You guys keep talking. And
what was that first guitar that, like, you know, I mean, you know, because for me, like, you know, when you get that first USA made guitar in your hands, you're just like, oh shit. Like,
yeah, I had the first guitar that I really got that I could call mine was it was a little imitation Stratocaster guitar. I think it was called a Kent.
Yeah.
And then I got an imitation Explorer, you know, back in the day. And but my dad had some really cool like hollow body Gibsons, you know, like a 335. And he had another guitar from like the 30s or something that I spray painted, and he chewed me out because I wanted a black guitar, and I spray painted his Sunburst, you know, hollow body electric acoustic, like a T-Bone Walker type, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, if I had that guitar today, it'd probably be one of my most expensive or valuable.
Even with your refinish, it'd still be worth it.
But yeah, you know, I'm neurotic, man, you know, about my guitar tone. And between 2013, I think, and between releasing my album Hotel Voodoo, I didn't release any music for 4 years, and that's a long time for me, you know. And most of that 4 years, I was unhappy with the way my guitar sounded, and I couldn't figure out why. You know,
where'd you troubleshoot? You start at amp? Like, have you been a consistent like
preamp?
Okay.
Well, preamps. You know, it's like, okay, now I got my Neve preamps. You know, 1084s. You know, I'm running those through, you know, 1176 tube. You know, or LA2A compressors. Okay, I the microphones, the ribbons. You know, I'm trying all kinds of different mics. I just totally didn't like the piercing sound of a 57, and so I'm looking for other things to do it with. And then, you know, and then you got that right, and then you get to the amplifier, and then you get to the amplifier, and it's like, well, what's wrong with these tubes? Should I use the 84s or you know? And so I'm trying to figure out the tube situation, and I'm still not happy. And then it's like, then they have to be hand wired, and then. So then it gets to the speaker. Okay, I got the right tube, I got the right pin, but then something's wrong with my speaker. And so I settled on the greenbacks, you know, the greenbacks. And every time I play a gig on my rider, you know, I always demand that they provide me with greenback speakers. It doesn't matter what the brand name is on the box, on the speaker cabinet.
It's all similar wiring. Just give me the between tubes and speaker. That's the combo.
Yeah, so I need greenback speakers for my tone. But then there's a local some local amp makers here. I live right out between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and there's some local amp makers. They make an amp called the Comet.
Are you Supro?
No, Comet. K-O.
That's the name of the brand.
That's the name of the brand.
Got it. Okay.
And it is the greatest amplifier for blues guitar playing.
Don't tell me that, because now I'm going to be justifying to my wife the cost of the Comet app, because shit.
Because Marshall has the name, but unless you got a vintage Marshall that's in mint condition and all of this, just because you get the name Marshall don't mean that you have a Marshall.
No. Look at you right on Comet's website with your Explorer.
Yeah, Comet makes the greatest amplifiers, handmade amplifiers that there are. And so that saved me. But then still, there was an issue. Now, the Comet don't have anything but just a tone knob and a volume knob. And let me see, they got a tone knob and a saturation knob. It's like 3 knobs. And anything more than that, you start losing the purity of the tone.
Yeah. Well, and Leo did. I mean, the champs and starting on, it was just, you didn't have masters, you didn't have gain channels. It was just exactly maybe 2 EQ.
And when you play the Stratocaster, of course, I had prior to all of this, I had went through all kinds of different pickups, trying to figure out what would be the right pickup. So I do have a humbucker on my bridge. Got to
have the HSS.
Yeah, and I use like some kind of 67. I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, but yeah. So I think I got a little 59 something on my bridge pickup, nice and hot.
Yep.
And so all that's good. And then so when I got that amplifier, and then I travel with the head on all my concerts, So
212 cabinet, single 12. Like, what's your?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the cabinet, as long as it has a greenback.
Yeah.
One greenback is, now the bigger the hall, if I'm playing at a festival or something, then give me a couple of Marshall cabinets with greenbacks if they have them. But like I said, it doesn't matter what brand the cabinet is as long as it has a greenback. Because what happens with these, with a lot of amps, they're designed for heavy metal. And in heavy metal, the speaker cabinets, the speakers, the cones, they're scooped out. The mids are scooped out. So you get the low end and you get the high end, and the mids are scooped out. And for blues performance, at least for my tone, I need a boost on the mid, and I need the highs and lows scooped out. So it's more of a mid tone. And so when I go to a venue and they bring me one of these modern, type of cabinets, and you start trying to you're trying to crank it up to get your tone to hear that mid tone, and you're constantly cranking those highs, and that's piercing to the audience ears. It's piercing to your ears because you're boosting the highs way out of sync just to try to hear the mids.
Yep.
And now you got to start dialing back your effects and dialing back this, and it's
you're chasing it at that time.
Yeah, now you got a 2-hour sound check going on just trying to get the mids to pop. So, but if I get the greenback and you boost that, you don't have to turn that up so much. You can play at a lower volume and still get that dirt and the grime and the breakup, from the speakers.
Do you control like a lot of your breakup right on your volume? Like roll off the volume? Are you one of those players that really controls and to add in dirt or clean it up? Or are you more stomp box kind of person where you're adding in the overdrive? Like, do you set your amp at a higher point, roll off your volume, and then you control a lot of your gain just through your volume and tone? Or what's
the beauty of the Comet is that you don't need any. You can just control your lead and your rhythm volume just from your guitar volume knob. You don't need anything special. And because when you turn it up or turn it down, it responds in a certain way that you don't need. I don't need any effects. The only problem is they don't have reverb on their amps because reverbs take away from the tone as well.
Right.
So there's no reverb there. There's no distortion, whatever. You have to turn it up to kind of get the speakers to break up a little bit to get a distortion.
What do you use for reverb wise? Are you pedal or are you going into a unit?
Well, here's the thing about reverb. Now, for years, I was kind of set on the Fender Twin, the Fenders. But the Fenders, you got to crank them up so loud to get a little bit of a breakup. Yep. They don't really work anymore. They're just kind of built for a different. Yeah, now that we have PAs and in-ear monitors and
stage volume way down.
Yeah. So loud amps, just having a 25 watt, 30 watt amp is plenty. I travel with a 20 watt, a 19 watt Comet mostly, but for festivals on my ride, I'll tell them to bring me 50 watts, 80 watts, whatever I might need, 100 or whatever. Or patch a couple together, like my Comet with a Marshall head or something. But reverb, I don't use reverb as much as I used to. In the Fender, you get the built-in reverb, and it's nice, that spring. But when it comes to reverb, I have all kinds of reverb. Is one of my most. It is like, because the way we record now, we don't usually get into the big rooms and stuff to get the natural ambience. Yep. And for years, man, and recording albums and trying to get a guitar tone to work, you just can't get it's to sound like you're in a natural room. Yep. And they've all kinds of sample reverbs and this, that, and other thing. And none of those really work for me. But what I found that worked for me in the studio is the PCM70, the Lexicon. They don't make them anymore, but you can get them, you can find some refurbished ones or something online if you're lucky to find them. But these things they just make a guitar sing, And so, and they have the most beautiful sounding, dark delays. So for reverb and delay, normally when I'm recording, I'm using my PCM70s. Now I do have an outboard spring reverb as well that sounds like a plate, but it's a real spring. And like on my album Hotel Voodoo, you hear a lot of that mono spring reverb on the vocal and on the lead guitar, and it just kind of got a nice beautiful wash there that's kind of dark, and you don't have to do a lot of EQing and everything. But when I go live, I used to have to bring I used to have to fly around with a huge pedal board because I didn't always know what kind of amp I would get, what kind of shape it would be in. So for a Fender amp, if I'm just plugging into a Fender Bassman or a Fender Twin, to really get my tone, what really worked best was a fuzz face, a fuzz face like those 60s fuzz phases would be my main thing, and it runs by battery, and you got to have the right battery in it, else it still don't. The tone gets a little thin, but it doesn't have it doesn't plug into the wall, It doesn't have an AC or DC to it, and then and then you have a nice delay and a tube screamer. A classic tube screamer is still a great go-to for blues guitars. Yep. And then there's a lot of some color, a little bit of a chorus or some other little effects in between. But mainly these days, all I need is my delay, because usually if I'm in a nice room, I'm going to get some verb. But I try to use two delays, like a short delay and a longer delay.
Kind of like a slapback.
That gives me my reverberation with my Comet.
Is that an always on type of effect for you when you're playing live? Just always having some slight delay, like a little slapback in there? Is like, what I mean? Is there an always on type of effect? Like reverb's one of them for so many people, to where it's just like the second, like playing live, just like the slightest little hint of it. Do you have like an always on kind of effect when you're playing?
It depends. Most times I have a basic setting, but then I have a couple of songs. Like there's a song that we do live that's a really that's a number that is written around the delay. A song called Antebellum Postcards, which is played in a real droning type of guitar tuning, and that's another one of my problems. I used to travel back in the days, man. That's one thing about being with a major label. When I was with the major labels and stuff. You can travel with somebody to tune your guitars, and you can travel with 7 or 8 guitars and choose this tuning for that song. But these days, I have to create my sets based on the tuning of the guitar. If I'm tuned in open D, or if I'm tuned in Dadgad or something like that, then I kind of usually play the songs in that key before moving on to the next one.
There's a question right there. Like, are you always playing in percentage of the time? Do you find yourself in standard tuning, alternative tunings?
When I'm on acoustic guitar, I'm never in standard tuning. I don't have any tunes. Well, I rarely play in standard tuning on acoustic. And I don't use a capo very often. I hardly ever use a capo on acoustic guitar. I see people doing it, but it always confuses me, really. The capo is more confusing than just retuning the guitar. And I got to get better at that. I got to work on that. But on electric guitar, most times I'm in a standard tuning. I know that some people tune down to E flat, but I don't understand why they do that. I don't think that really adds anything. And that's another thing.
The tone junkies will say it's because of like, well, depending on the scale length, going to E flat, you get better tension. It's just sometimes I'm just like, all right, let's pump.
Yeah, I think it's just that Jimi Hendrix did it.
Yeah, no, dude. So many things that guitar players do now, whether it's certain pedals are used or certain this, it's just because it's like a
Stevie Ray did it because Jimmy did it.
Yeah, everyone's obsessed with Dumble.
And then everybody else do it because Stevie did it, and on and on. But I think Jimmy did it because he came out of the military band thing, and you kind of would tune the E to be in tune with the clarinets and other instruments in the little military kind of setup. Right. So, and I don't know if it helped his voice or something, but he played on very light strings. So, I don't know why he did it, but to his ear, that just worked for him. And then Stevie Ray, I think he would have broke all of the necks of his guitar with those 13s on his guitar if he hadn't tuned down a couple of notches.
Yeah. Well, there's a good quote. What gauge are you?
Yeah. So that was the other thing I was going to say is that my search, after I got all my electronics together, my search was the guitar strings. And so my guitar strings, I used Gibson 10s, pure nickel.
Okay. Yeah.
And nothing else will do.
Are those round cores? Nickel wrapped round cores? Core or the hex core?
No, it's pure nickel.
Okay.
It's not like there's nickel plated, where they have nickel and you've got the little wrapping around it.
Yep.
But before Vietnam, everybody played pure nickel strings. There wasn't any other kind of string. So all those classic guitar albums that you hear in the 60s, early 70s, there were no modern strings. They were all pure nickel strings. So even though you might have a fantastic Les Paul, you're probably going to get that tone that some of these records have. First, they're playing the tape, and that's a whole nother ball game. Trying to recreate tape with ones and others in a digital format, and that's important.
And the right kind of tape too, right? We had Wes Maybe on, and he's like that whale fat tape sounds better than the modern tape as well.
Most people don't use real tape anymore, but there's some emulations of tape out there now.
Yeah,
that comes, pretty close.
Right.
They come pretty close, and guitars need that, because it takes the bite and that piercing, right around 1.2K is where that piercing is, and you got to either dip that down with EQ, or you get a little tape on there, a little distortion, and it kind of just softens it for the ear. Because in modern music and digital music, now in the old school, back in the day, you could crank the guitar up. It was the guitar, you can put it right out in front, and it would be okay on your ears, because the distortion would soften it. But you can't put the guitar in front of music today. It would kill people. It would just make you deaf. So music, the guitar has to bag up in the digital realm, and so it can't be out front like it used to be. And as a blues guitarist, you're trying to figure out how to do that if you're not working with tape. So anyway, the guitar strings, the pure nickel strings, the Gibson pure nickel strings is what I've settled on. And once I settled on the pure nickel strings, and I had the Neves, and I had the mics, and I had the cables,
everything settled,
and the batteries, and I had all my electronics in order.
See, I love hearing the psyche of the especially a guitarist right there, because it's just you go through, you hear the pain struggle of just like, all right, where is this? It's the right battery, it's the right speaker combination, and that's what's funny too. It's just because for it's like the Coke versus Pepsi kind of thing. It's just like, well, it's just to somebody's ear, like another guy would be playing that setup and be like, oh, I don't know, the mids are off in my ear, or this, or it's just like that's. Were you guitar first or piano first, or always like second you started?
Well, I got to finish this thing.
Oh shit! Sorry. All right. See, he's not done yet. It wasn't solved just because of the strings.
I told you it can get.
No, I am not bored by any means. I can
get in the weeds, but it wasn't right. I'm recording. I'm hating what I'm hearing, and I'm like, I can't think anything else. And then I ran guys crazy, taking my amps into the shop, saying, man, something, and they would just look at me strange, like, and they would hold the amp for a couple of months and not do anything to it, and then hand it back to me, and I'd be like, yeah, well, it sounds a little better now, but he hadn't even touched the thing. And so everybody was just, understand that Chris is kind of weird. His ears are kind of weird, and he can't be satisfied. So I got everything right, and it's still off. And you know what it was? The last change I had to make, my guitar pick.
Yeah. Now, you know what though? All right. So what were you using before? What material? Celluloid, plectra?
I was using medium picks.
Like what material though? Like Fender mediums, like the celluloid.
Yeah, Fender medium.
Was it the thickness, the size of the pick that you changed to? Material? Yes.
So now my tone is what they call like a jazz 3, this heavy, small pick.
Yep.
And once I put that to those, because a lot of people get a Strat and they go through all these different pickups. And really what they need to do is get the right strings on the guitar for the kind of music they're playing. And so once I put that pick on there, then everything started singing.
No, that's
that's so true. Then I could finish my mixes and I could finish my recordings, and that's how Hotel Voodoo came about,
Because of the Jazz 3.
Yeah, that whole struggle. And the last thing I'll say about the guitar strings, and then I'll go to your question about the guitars. Like I was saying, during the war, they couldn't know it got too expensive to make pure nickel strings around during Vietnam. And so they started wrapping them and just giving you a little bit of nickel and then wrapping it with some other stuff, and it made the strings cheaper. But then also the heavy metal guys, in the 80s, they like this bright tone that you get from these, certain kind of strings and scooped out mids and all that kind of stuff. And they just kind of ruined guitar playing for everybody like me anyway. So, but nowadays, if you want pure nickel strings, you have to specifically ask for it or ask your store to stock it or find somewhere online where they still sell pure nickel strings. And one of the few companies that still, and all pure nickel strings aren't equal because they stay in tune, they tune up quick and they stay in tune for a long time. But the Gibson pure nickel 10s, that's what I put on my Strat. And
I'll have to try the Gibsons. I've done the DR Pure Blues. I've done those. That's similar to the Gibson ones. And then there's company String Joy that's been coming up out of the woodworks. They're like boutique string manufacturer. They've been doing a lot of that. It's always a chase for the classic tone, and so whether it's.
Let me ask a question as the non-guitar player in this group. I am the combat guy, though, right? So when I look at my rig and what I want to get together, I also have to think about portability and mobility. And every night you go to put your gear on, and you just look at that stand that has your shit on it, and you're just like, God, it's so fucking heavy. What can I get rid of? What do I need? What do I not? And so there's always these compromises. Like in the movies, they've got 5,000 rounds. You can't carry that shit around. You just can't.
No.
So is there a thing like that for you? Like where you're just like, I can't carry all of this extra shit. I need to find something that's elegant and then the compromises so that there are no variables, because I can't go pull the weapon or grab my pencil and write and the lead breaks. I can't have that shit happen. I have to eliminate all variables. What does that mean?
Probably similar to application too in combat. So I bet I'd be curious to hear Chris's response. It's like the answer might be based on, well, what's the application for?
Yeah. Well, I think that as monitoring music, and monitors on stage, we're talking live, right? So monitors on stage and ear monitors and mixing and PA systems and stuff, has really, really improved, so you don't need a lot of stage volume. And so that have made it economical. Now, fortunately for me, when I travel, I never bring my own amplifiers to gigs. It's on a rider, so the promoter provides all the drums, keyboards, backline, whiskey, whatever we decide we need. The chicks, I'm just kidding. But we back in the day, that was the deal. Back in the day, you would bring all kinds of equipment and you set up this elaborate thing because that was part of the show. But these days I basically just travel with that Comet head, and once I get to the gig, I can make almost any speaker sound good. Now, when I bring my pedals, when I was playing with Fenders or playing other kind of amps, I'd have to bring a big pedal board like a doctor. You know, you don't know which you might not need all the pedals, but you better have them on hand just in case, you know, to make your adjustments, you know. But I don't need any pedals to plug into my my Comet, but a tube screamer helps and delay. You know, that's my main thing. And then there's certain ballads and stuff where I might need a little, you know, a little chorus or a flanger or something like that. But I have a very, very simple setup. But it's just getting that tone, because when you turn when you crank yourself all the way up to 10, or you really get to wailing, you don't want people to be taken aback by some piercing tone. But you also want the guitar to be out front, you know, and for it to be right in your face at the same time. And so if it's going to be right in people's face, you know, it has to have a you know, a pleasing tone to it, you know. But I don't travel with rack gear. Back in the day, you would travel with rack gear and all that, but then you need a lot of help. But I just tell the promoter, you know, I need a guitar tech on hand, or I need an assistant on hand, or I need, you know, I just tell the promoter what I need, and usually they provide those things instead of me traveling with a guy to tune up my guitar, or traveling with a guy to set me up and stuff, you know. So I have a pretty economical little travel, you know, tour travel situation that we do. And we're only a trio, and I play piano at gigs as well. But my PCM 70s, my Lexicon PCM 70s, my rack gear and stuff, it just stays in my studio. It never moves.
How many guitars do you travel with?
Usually 2.
A humbucker, Gibson kind of style, and then a single coil, or just kind of varies?
No, I usually just travel with my Strat and with an acoustic. I have a Gibson L2, and usually I travel with those 2. I used to travel also with a J45, but the airlines have busted it up so much.
Yeah, FedEx, UPS, airlines, they don't they see fragile on an instrument, even if it's in a Pelican case, they can be pretty rough on them. What kind of Strat do you have?
I bought my Strat, the Strat that I mainly use now. I got that Strat around 1990 or so it's kind of vintage now. But it was an American 40th anniversary edition, and it's a blonde, and you know, I've had the neck, you know, redone a few times, and it's a beauty, man. And the nice thing about Stratocasters is they're so light, whereas like a Les Paul is so heavy, you know, it can give you back problems almost. They're so heavy.
Even if it's chambered, it's still looking at like 8+ pounds.
Yeah. Now I have some electric Gibsons. I got a hollow body Gibson that's kind of a 335 and a Les Paul combined. What do they call this thing? It's a 134 or something like this. But it's a blue guitar. If you see me with a blue guitar, so it's a really nice. It's got a Les Paul tone, but it's also hollow body electric. And then my Explorer, and my Explorer was destroyed during Hurricane Katrina. It was left underwater in my home down in New Orleans, you know, for like weeks. You know, it was underwater. And eventually I found a guy to restore it, and with the original parts.
Wow.
And I think he even was able to use the original electronics, surprisingly. Wow. But you know, he redid the finish on it and everything, and so it's in great shape now. But the thing about the Gibson guitar, the Stratocaster guitar works good in a trio. So I travel in a power trio, and so a Strat can sing in that setting. But the Gibson guitar with those humbuckers on it can blast through, you know, and penetrate, you know, in a larger setting or whatever, you know. So if I'm doing something where if I'm mixing a song and sometimes on my songs I have 5, 6, 7 guitars going, but if I want the guitar to be really rocking, say like the tune on the new album Angola, you'll hear my Explorer on Jenna, Louisiana. And so that's doing the guitar solos and the picking, and it's got that pure, it screams blues rock, you know.
Yeah.
And you can't really you can get close, but you can't really get that with the Stratocaster, you know. The Stratocaster, a little bit of a softer instrument, you know, and it's a little more delicate, you know. But if you want to really cut through and just getting right down to it, you know, some AC/DC or some, you know, whatever, you know, you really want to be in your face, you know.
Something about that middle position on a three-way two humbucker guitar that just does.
Yeah. Even though you use a humbucker on a Strat, it's close, but it's not quite.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're recording and you're painting a picture, at least for me, I'll use several guitars, you know, for different colors depending on, you know, what I want to do with it. But my main instrument and my main tone is the Stratocaster through the Comet.
What with that five-way position, are you predominantly in a certain position on the Strat? Do you find yourself in like that? Where do you find yourself kind of always settling? And how often when you're on stage are you going from? I'd imagine it's probably like, you know, a good amount of like neck to bridge. But are you like, how often are you like going, you know, up middle here, like, or do you kind of keep it, set it and forget it, mainly just neck and bridge on the five-way, or?
It depends on the tune and even on where I'm at in the tune. If I want to cut through, I have to use my humbucker. You know, so I have to go to the bridge, but it's a thicker tone there. You know, it doesn't thin out. It really cuts through. And but if I'm doing like I'll be in the fourth position, you know, a lot of times because then I can combine that with this pure, clean, you know, chimey, you know, tone of the Strat. But I hardly ever go straight middle position, like the third position.
You're always combining either neck and bridge or neck and mid or bridge.
Yeah, the second position and the middle position, I rarely use those. But, you know, the forward position I use quite a bit. And then, you know, for certain tunes, I'll use the neck position, which is it's a lower volume, but it has a certain fatness.
Oh yeah.
You know, warmth, you know, that happens there, which is beautiful on balance.
Yep. Yeah, something about that neck position on a Strat is just tasty. What's so where did you start out as piano? What was your first instrument? You started out like writing guitar, piano, and when was it when you like became like, I'm a guitarist? Or do you consider yourself mainly more guitar, pianist?
Oh yeah, I'm a guitar player through and through. The trumpet was my first instrument. I was going to be, you know, a blues trumpet player. And I even when you say blues trumpet, that sounds weird because there aren't, you know what I mean? But that just shows you that there's no such thing as jazz. You know, there are no jazz trumpet players. They're all blues players if they're good ones. You know, Miles Davis played the blues. You know, so this is. So anyway, I was going to be a trumpet player, and I started off on the cornet as a kid, and graduated, you know, to other instruments, and you know, checked other things out, the piano, the bass, and then I landed on the guitar. And part of landing on the guitar was my father kind of encouraged me that if you want to be a band leader, you know, you should play the guitar, you know, because the guitar was the instrument that was the trumpet was the loudest instrument in acoustic bands, you know, through the acoustic years. And so if you wanted to cut through, you played the trumpet. If you wanted to be the leader of a band or really shine, or let your solos be heard. And then the guitar came in and overtook the trumpet as the instrument of the blues. Now, it's all blues to me, you know, all popular music. So when we're talking country, rock, whatever, we're still talking blues. So the guitar came on, but then Miles Davis decided that he was going to fight this. And he was like, I'm not going to let these guys, you know, come and take my music. You know, they playing my notes and stuff on the guitar. You know, I'm not going to let these guys. So he started trying to experiment playing the wah-wah with the trumpet and, you know, some flanger with the trumpet and playing the trumpet through a Marshall amplifier. And it's like, Miles, it just ain't
not working, bro.
It ain't gonna happen, man. You're gonna have to just accept that the trumpet, you know, has been surpassed by this loud electric instrument. And he fought that for like a decade, you know, but you just couldn't turn that. Now, interestingly, the harmonica adapted well to electronics. So some instruments adapted well to electronics, you know, and some instruments did not, you know.
Was your first guitar acoustic or electric?
My early start?
Your first guitar, was it acoustic or electric?
Yeah, it was a Stratocaster knockoff.
Right, the Kent.
Called the Kent, yeah. That was my first guitar that I could call my own. Before that, I always fooled around on my dad's guitars. But yeah, so I mean, I made the transition just as the trumpet was making the transition to the guitar, you know what I mean? So I was going to be that trumpet player because my uncle taught me how to play trumpet, and I was going to, play the blues on the trumpet. And then I made the switch to the guitar, and I liked how much noise it made and things, and I just gravitated toward that. And the rest, as they say, is history, man.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. we did 2 shows. Do you want to talk about anything else? You're on a roll.
Not too much. I mean, you guys asked me about piano, but I don't have a whole lot to say about piano other than, I've been using piano as a songwriter for years. And, I've always used that as a songwriting tool. And now it's always a part of my show. If they have a nice grand piano in the room, something I'll always try to use it to do a set, So it's become more and more a part of what I do. And then the other thing is, man, drum machines. I mean, right now the PCX is just swinging for me. You know what I mean? So, those, trying to get that tone, trying to maintain the blues philosophy and stay true to my culture, that Creole Louisiana culture where the blues came out of. Back when my dad had Tabby's Blues box back in the day, you can go to any pawn shop and get a great sounding guitar. You can go to any pawn shop. All the amps and guitars in the early 70s and early 80s that might end up in a pawn shop, they were all great sounding. You didn't need a classic 1920s or so. It was like that was the era of great amplification. Nowadays, it's really hit and miss. I got orange amplifiers. I've tried everything, but like I said, the Comet is a very expensive amplifier.
You pay for what you get in musical worlds for a lot of things, especially.
But it'll save you on a whole lot of other effects and pickups and everything. When you combine all the things that you might have to do to reach that tone, it's a good investment. But yeah, man, I guess I've been kind of, I haven't been out in public very much, haven't talked a whole lot. So I guess I had a lot to say here. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, but I think it's good, man. And you also do a lot of stuff. I mean, as an artist, it's always great to watch you create, whether you're on stage during Lackawanna Blues, which everybody should go see, or your book, which is linked right here. I mean, I can't wait for that book to come out because I just wanted to dig in and have you on for, 3 hours talking about that thing. You just do so much. So I appreciate you taking the time to kind of break all these things down because it's special. And we need artists like you to illustrate the problems of society because, I think academically, primarily, and I know that I can look at numbers and I can see the problem, but I also need the artist to illustrate the problem in a way that I can't see it or can't cognate it. And so thanks for doing that for all of us too, as we try to all figure out what it is that we're all trying to do here and how to just take one apple off the tree, not to cut the whole fucking thing down and say, apple tree's on sale for $1 and start chopping them down to make money. So I if nothing else, I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for that, and as an artist, that's what, at least, most of us, that's what we live to do, to try to bring beauty into the world. It might, even though we might make some music that's designed to be offensive or designed to be ugly or designed to get your attention in some salacious way, it's about trying to shock you or get your attention, hopefully not just to sell some product, you know what I mean? But hopefully to touch, your humanity, to reach for our humanities to communicate with each other, and try to beautify the world, I mean, at least that's what I'm trying to do. And I think that's what the philosophy of the blues is all about. So, yeah.
No, Pete, I appreciate you letting me sit
Any
in
last
on this
questions
and ask
about
a bunch
Ryan
of
or comments?
questions. No, I just appreciate you letting me sit in and ask some gear nerd questions and just, Chris, I appreciate you just giving the insight. It's with, I think there's I worked for Fender Guitars for 5 years. I've been managing artists for a while, and like, you know, there's so many assumptions and misconceptions about being a professional musician, and so it's like I love getting to hear an accomplished person like yourself be able to speak. And you know, I'm gonna be making all my guitar clients listen to this, because I'm just like, see, you know, it's not just about it's not just about selling the records. It's like the combination of that and just being, you know, everyone started out playing music because it was an emotional escape form. It was a release. It's therapy, right? And then, you know, as a professional musician, you get to a point where you blur that line, and it's just how do you balance that, you know, the professional aspect, but this is still something that was, you know, it's self-therapy. And, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of this period. I firmly believe in that. I have to. It's a half glass full, silver lining kind of mentality. And, you know, it's a special opportunity. You know, when was the last time you've probably had this much time off? It's probably been forced time off, but, you know, so many artists I work with, they haven't had a summer off for 20 years. And so I'm excited, you know, over the next 6 years to see what kind of the music that's going to come out of this, the recording, because it's allowed us, like you said earlier, Chris, you know, whether you're a musician or not, like, hopefully this time has provided people a time to just kind of like sit back and fucking think, whether that's about themselves, what they want to do with their career, whether about the world. And, you know, so it's just been awesome getting to chat with you.
Yeah, you know, we take these lemons and hopefully, you know, these lemons of this pandemic and make some lemonade, you know. And yeah, so it's been a pleasure, you guys, and you know, I'm sure there'll be some things come up in the future that we'll reach back in and get everybody caught up on. So thanks for giving me a forum.
Yeah, no worries. And I like to say, it's not half full, it's not half empty. I say grab 3 shot glasses, split that shit 3 ways, let's do shots.
There you go.